Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed the election reform bill into law. That's the bill the Democrats fled the state in order to try and stop. The Taliban announcing new key caretaker positions, giving nations an idea of who they will be dealing with in what many leaders have called a new reality. This comes as Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is working with the Taliban to get Americans out of Afghanistan if they want to leave. And Hawaii is rolling out vaccine passports at restaurants, bars, and gyms. This follows similar moves in other states, as well as around the world. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Some big news in the Lone Star State. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed the election reform bill into law. That's the bill the Democrats fled the state in order to try and stop it. Abbott saying election integrity is now law in the state of Texas. It comes just 1 week after the bill was sent to his desk by the state legislature. The bill aims to secure elections by banning drive-through and 24-hour voting and sets an ID requirement for mail-in voting. The bill's author, Bill Hughes, summed up its aims as easy to vote, hard to cheat. The bill adds new restrictions and criminal penalties to the voting process in the state. Democrats say the bill is meant to benefit Republicans because the restrictions largely impact people who tend to vote for Democrats. That includes minorities and people with disabilities. Now, let's turn to updates in Afghanistan. The Taliban announcing new key caretaker positions, giving nations an idea of who they will be dealing with in what many leaders have called a new reality. And as to the Americans still in the country, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the Taliban isn't allowing them to leave because the U.S. citizens don't have the proper papers. Blinken acknowledged a relatively small number of Americans are trying to leave the airport with their families. This comes after top Republican in Congress, Michael McCaul, said the Taliban blocked 6 planes from leaving the airport, adding that the Taliban was holding Americans hostage for demands. Executive Director of the nonprofit Ascend in Afghanistan, Marina Legree, told AFP that 600-plus Afghans, in addition to 19 Americans, were being prevented from leaving the airport in question. Blinken went on to say that the Taliban assured them again that all Americans and Afghans with valid documents can leave.
That commitment in at least one instance in the last 24 hours with a family that was able to leave through an overland route. And we are not aware of anyone being held on an aircraft or any hostage-like situation in Mazar-e-Sharif.
Now, as to how many Americans are still in Afghanistan, different reports coming in. The White House has maintained around 100 Americans are still in Afghanistan. But Representative Darrell Issa says that number could be higher. He estimates there's likely about 500 Americans stranded in the country. He told the Associated Press, unless we continue and get the rest of our American citizens and all those otherwise eligible out, we won't have done our job. Issa went on to say, when including the family members of American citizens, the number of people could be as high as 1,000. And Representative Don Bacon added that the Biden administration needs to provide the full number of those left behind. He said the problem is it doesn't include families, adding they are lowballing the numbers. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain on Sunday told CNN that he believes around 100 Americans remain inside Afghanistan. And President Biden last week said that about 100 to 200 U.S. citizens remained. Some veteran-led rescue groups say that the White House estimate is too low. Mike Jason, who runs a rescue operation called Allied Airlift 21, says he believes the figure is far higher. And it's also misleading because it doesn't include family members of Americans trapped there. Alex Plitzas, an Iraq war veteran who is part of a rescue network called Digital Dunkirk, said that in one day he got calls from 6 Americans stuck in the country earlier this week.
Legal permanent residents and U.S. citizens, that number is probably back up, probably closer actually into the thousands.
And as to those reports of Americans being held hostage, the State Department says it can't confirm that information.
Without personnel on the ground, we can't verify the accuracy of manifests, the identities of passengers, flight plans, or aviation security protocols. So this is a challenge, but one we are determined to work through.
Blinken is set to testify before a Senate committee about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan next Tuesday. And as to the troops, they are back in the States now. Families, about 140 soldiers based out of Fort Drum Army Base in upstate New York, welcome their loved ones home after a 9-month deployment in Afghanistan.
Technology helps, doing the FaceTime thing and being able to talk to them. Obviously, we have that advantage over the the first few years of the GWAT, but it was really tough. But it's all good because we're home now.
We're so excited to have him back home. I know Sadie missed him. You know, I know he missed being home with her and missed seeing the new one.
Just, super thankful that I have my wife to take care of them. It's one less thing to worry about. I know she's done an awesome job, and I just hope I can give her a break.
I'm very happy to be home. It's good to see my family after quite a while.
The soldiers were officially dismissed by their superiors before they met with their families. Fort Drum is located in northern New York, about 30 miles from Canada. Almost 20,000 soldiers are based there. Surrounding the base are the Great Lakes and the Adirondack Mountains. The soldiers flew into the United States via Germany. Most of the troops who arrived at Fort Drum left soon after. Now, speaking of New York, the city was the first to roll out vaccine passports, and now Hawaii is set to follow suit. The mayor is saying it's set to take effect next week. The passports will be used in restaurants, bars, and gyms. There are exceptions to the vaccine mandate, including children under the age of 12, people who can present a negative COVID-19 test result, people entering and remaining for fewer than 15 minutes per 24-hour period, and a restaurant that operates as a takeout, delivery, or food truck. And the vaccine passports seem to be heading to Europe. UK vaccines minister says the UK government will proceed with plans to mandate the vaccine passport for nightclubs and large venues. He said in an interview with the BBC that the government would seek to impose the system by the end of September. The Nighttime Industries Association says such requirements could cripple the industry and see nightclubs facing discrimination cases. And some are noting the minister is breaking his own promises made back in January that he wouldn't roll out vaccine passports. He wrote on Twitter back on January 12th, "We have no plans to introduce vaccine passports. No one has been given or will be required to have a vaccine passport." A person in the comments section asked that same day, "Can we hold you to this?" And the minister replied saying, "Yes, you can." And mixed messages about children getting the shot. The vaccines minister suggested in an interview with Times Radio on Sunday, children may be able to get vaccinated without parental consent. That's if the UK approves vaccines for 12 to 15-year-olds. But in a separate interview that aired the same day, he told Sky News that he could give that assurance absolutely that parents' consent will be sought if the government pressed on with its vaccination plan. Meanwhile, people in France are taking to the streets for the 8th consecutive weekend to protest vaccine passports. But this time, there are reports of police brutality. Videos of French police beating anti-health pass protesters in a Paris shopping mall have gone viral. It happened last Saturday when a group of protesters reportedly marched into the mall without the health pass. The police are accusing the women of destroying public property. And in the video, sounds of bystanders booing the police. The police later carried the women away and arrested several others. Around 140,000 people protested the health pass system in several French cities on Saturday. In Paris, protesters marched past the Eiffel Tower and chanted "Freedom, Macron resign," or "Macron in prison." The French government rolled out the system last month. All adults have to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination or a negative virus test within 3 days to enter most public spaces, like restaurants, gyms, and entertainment venues, and to travel long distance. On the other side of the world, tens of thousands of Canadians are also protesting against vaccine passports in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. So far, 4 Canadian provinces have introduced vaccine passport requirements: Quebec, British Columbia, Manitoba, and Ontario. They are the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th most populous provinces in the country. Together, they make up almost 80% of the Canadian population. And amid all this, what about booster shots? Israel becomes the first country to roll out booster shots for everyone 12 and up. The government announcing that vaccine passports will only be valid if people get the booster shot, saying vaccine passports will expire 6 months after people get their second vaccine dose. Around 2 million Israelis have gotten the boost shot out of a total population of 9.2 million. The Prime Minister said we have to complete 3rd doses for all of our citizens. I call on those aged 12 and up to go out and immediately take the 3rd shot. Israel requires a vaccine passport to access a number of different venues, including restaurants, theaters, and bars. It applies to everyone 3 and up. Children 3 to 12 years of age have to prove their COVID-19 status by using an antigenic test. Although Israel is one of the most vaccinated countries on earth, cases are rising there. The nation's 7-day average for COVID-19 infections as of last Monday was over 1,000 per 1 million people. That is double the rate of numbers in the U.S. That's according to Oxford University's Our World in Data. And because of that, Sweden has banned Israeli residents from entering. Portugal has already done the same. And Australia's Premier of New South Wales suggests annual boost shots. The Premier likens it to the flu, saying living with Delta means social distancing, QR codes, vaccine passports. It also means once a year getting a booster or a jab to vaccinate. And the Australian state is rolling out a new quarantine app that requires users to use geolocation and live face recognition check-ins. Users have just 15 minutes to respond to the random check-in, and if they miss one, they will receive a follow-up phone call to discuss the reason why. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.